Hey everyone, I'd like to welcome everyone to our first episode of Lions Leadership Den. This is your host, Steve Rosenberg, along with Alex Osenenko. Did I get that right, Alex?
Osenenko, yeah. So one of these days, man, one of these days, I'll get you to pronounce my last name. For now, this is
close enough.
Pretty close, man, yeah.
I was close. And so the reason for this show is we've created this to go and help fellow investors, or investors in business, I should say, that are trying to create a business that we all know that's where the rubber meets the road, right? We all know that, everyone talks about building a business, but nobody ever talks about kind of what happens in the failures and the leadership things that happen as far as what needs to be done to be successful on a daily basis. And we all know as entrepreneurs that a lot of things have to happen on a daily basis. A lot of things go right and a lot of things go wrong. And, I know there's a lot of great podcasts out here that talk about all the things that go right, and everyone has their cape on and they promote their company and they talk about all the good things. But we all kind of sit there in the background going, man, why does that guy have it right and we have it wrong? What am I doing wrong to make this work? Because he's got it and I don't have it. And I think the reality is a lot of people out there don't have it right. I think a lot of people are just like us that are out there trying to find solutions. We're trying to figure it out. And so we're going to have people on the show every week that are out there. They have success. They're doing good, but they also, they have bad days. They have challenges. They have, they have the work, family life struggle. They've got all the things that all of us have. And I think that there's a lot of entrepreneurs that I've talked to that said, that's a show that I want to know. That's something that I want to hear. So, Alex and I came together, right? And we talked about this, and this is something that both of us deal with and struggle with, and we both try to find solutions. And we said, we need to make a podcast about this. And, we think that the guy who's on the show today is a great test bed for the show. Our good friend, Wes Owens with Citizen Home Solutions. And, great guy, great business, but just like us, he's trying to figure it out, right? We all have the pieces to the Lego puzzle, and nobody knows the right combination if there is one. And so, Wes,
Steve, let's make introductions. First of all, let's talk about Steve Rosenberg, right? Steve is the founder and are you CEO of Empire?
No, Pete won't give me that title. I'm just co-founder.
Okay. Co-founder of Empire Industries, one of the fastest growing property management companies in the USA, maybe the world even. Very, very aggressive, very smart, very interesting to watch. I've been watching them and working with Steve for a long time. Maybe 5 years now, or something like that.
Yeah, about 5 years.
We had a good time. Myself, I'm a founder and CEO of a company called 4.5. We just recently got into Inc. 5,000 fastest growing companies in the U.S. Tremendous honor, but we're just getting started. And we do marketing and websites and pretty much everything pre-sale for property management companies. Our goal is to help them grow. And Wes, tell us a little bit about your business. What do you do? What's the premise? What do you do? How do you help your customers do better?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys for having me on the podcast. So Citizen Home Solutions is fast, easy, and free utility connection service. So basically the solution is anybody that's moving into a new home, leasing a property, whatever the case may be, we offer a solution that helps people set up their utilities and services for their new home. So anything from water, gas, electric, cable, internet, satellite security, internet, basically lawn maintenance, anything that they're going to need for their new home, we help them.
And so what problem are you solving? Because I've moved a few times. Now I'm a homeowner. I have been for a little bit. But before I was a renter, I remember, you got to figure out who to call but it's usually the property manager gives you a list of, best utilities or best services. So what problem do you really solve, Wes?
So you know as well as I do, I just moved, 2 years ago, and moving absolutely sucks, right? It's a time suck for whatever that you do. And it's the probably most inconvenient thing besides running a business, right? So the only thing that I can give people back is time. And so instead of you having to do the research yourself, call 5 to 6 different companies and troubleshoot and even figure out that's the company that services your area. By using our service, we can accomplish all that within like a 20 or 30 minute phone call. So we do all the research. We look up everybody. we educate you on what's available in your area, why you should use them, and we help you make the selections.
So, Wes, how long has this is obviously, I would say it's probably a new field, but maybe it's not. But how long have you been in this industry?
I've been in this industry for a little over 5 years now, which you guys have been on the journey with me through a few other endeavors. But I've just owned Citizen now for a little over 2 years.
And just so people understand, how many employees do you have? What's your territory? Where are you located? That kind of stuff.
So our connection center, we're based in Dallas, Texas. We have now currently 15, almost be 17 employees after next week, after 2 more start. We service about 38 states right now. And so we're pretty much nationwide. So if you call us and you need us to help you or help you with your move or service your tenants for a property management company, we can do that.
Okay.
How'd you get into this bit? Sorry, Steve, I'm just very curious. I mean, one of these days you just decide to open utility hookup business. How do you come about?
So before I was an entrepreneur 2 years ago, well, I've always been one, but I owned a marketing company and I was doing some consulting for a few other companies, competitors now. And I was bringing them a crap ton of business just by going out and driving business to their model. And I saw a lot of things that were broken with it. But when you are a marketing company and you see how much success you're bringing in one company and you see loopholes you could do better. Like I was at one time 70% of the lead generation for a company that I was helping out. And so I'm like, what the hell? I could do this myself, and probably even better. And then that's basically how it happened.
Oh, this very interesting founder story. Sorry, Steve, I'm going to dig in here for a little bit because, marketing guy kind of a thing. So tell me about your marketing gig. Were you like a franchise? Were you just basically a sole proprietor, created your own job, or did you have a sizable marketing agency?
I was sole proprietor and, and really, I mean, we'll define what my marketing company was, right? And what sales is relationships. And I had a very good, just from my vast previous, jobs that I've had a really good Rolodex and a sphere of influence of what I've always done. And so it's real easy for me to tie people together. But in any company, along with a few others that I helped, it's just identifying what their target demographic is and helping them identify that to go after it. And there was nothing, those smoke and mirrors magic show about what I did. It was just, as entrepreneurs, and we know our demographic of business, and you can help other people with that, like Steve has helped me. You just kind of figure it out and help them put the pieces together.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, Wes. So essentially you were working for your company. You saw this other industry and you saw that you could build a better mousetrap, essentially, right? You thought, I can do better than these guys. So you kind of jumped in, you started doing that. What was the first time where you kind of got hit in the face, where you thought, okay, maybe this isn't as easy as I thought? Was it a staffing? Was it a marketing? You knew a little bit about the industry, but obviously you probably didn't see all of it behind the curtain, right? What was that all of a sudden kind of stopped you in your tracks the first time?
So marketing's never the issue, right? That's the easy part, and getting sales and business right. It's a servicing part of it. And I think Will, my business partner, when we first dove into this 2.5 years ago, it was, yes, we think we can do it. We raised capital to start the business, but once you dig in and it's the operational part behind it, gaining all the national contracts that we needed and actually teaching our staff how to educate, not be pushy, but actually be a concierge service, but come up with rebuttals so that the customer doesn't tell us no, right? In a friendly way, because we're out here, we're representing the property management company and other customers that are referring us business. And so it's you got to walk that fine line. But to answer your question, it was very, very difficult to come up with scripts to not piss off companies, to make sure that we're still falling under that concierge model, and then also following all the providers' guidelines.
So the scripts were for who? Sorry, Steve. Scripts were for who are you pitching? Are you pitching property management companies?
So my pitch and my sales team, it's a different pitch than like when we have tenants and homeowners calling in or being referred by, the property manager or real estate agent. for us to reach out to them and help them. We have connection agents that connect, the utilities and services for the new homeowner or resident.
Right, but the pitches, you said it was very difficult to write scripts. I just want to dig in and understand this.
Sure.
It's very difficult to write scripts, so you're still polite but persistent enough to get to business. What was the script for? Who were you targeting?
The script was for actually setting up people's utilities and services. Because a lot of people, anytime you say a service is free, red flags go up and people are like, what the hell? There's no way this is free, right? So identifying it, going from, now, we're kind of put white gloves concept on this thing where we're calling on, hey, this is Wes Owens calling on behalf of Empire Industries. We're the free concierge service provided by them,
Wow.
So people hear the co-branded name and, they kind of let their guard down a little bit. So they actually allow us to help them. So before it was just all over the place.
So this first hit in the face is first, let me sort of paraphrase and see if sorry, Wes, if I got it right. So you all of it open this new business. You feel like, okay, you raise a little bit of capital with your partner, which I want to dig into a little bit in a second, but let's take a step forward. And then you started like, okay, we have the connection agent, so we're going to start plugging utilities in. And what you found is that people didn't trust you, even though you were referred.
Correct.
Okay. That was a challenge. Gotcha.
And I think, my question is, were you having trouble with delivery? With when I mean delivery of, you could do it better, right? We always think that as entrepreneurs, we can do it better than anyone. And we get that heroitis where if a salesperson is not saying it correctly, you just want to push them aside and say, let me show you how to do it, or let me do it. And then all of a sudden you start getting into that mode. I think a lot of us do, where you say, no one can do it as good as me, so I just have to do it because that's how it is. And they can't get the contracts the way I could, because you probably have a much higher close rate, I'm guessing, than when you hire someone.
Right.
And so that's when you start changing from operator to leader. And that's, I think, where a lot of people have that struggle, where all of a sudden they're going, okay, now I've got to be a leader and I have to shift to give the same deliverable product to get the same conversion rate, even though they cannot do it as well as you because they didn't create the baby that you created. Is that right? Did you have problems with that? And that's sometimes it's ego, sometimes it's identity, right?
It was that, and then I want to rewind a little bit, Alex, and I want to go back to what the big root of the problem was, and this is where I think all of us as entrepreneurs and new business have failed, is hiring the right people, right? So they can't be trained. We weren't disc profiling anybody. The hiring questions were terrible, where we were getting talent from. It's all into a pot of disaster once you look at it that way. You know what I mean? So I think now we do a lot better job at hiring because, we profile everybody. We make sure they fit our mold. And if they don't fit within the disc profile that we're looking for, we don't even interview them anymore. Like they have to fit that mold. But I think it was just in the beginning, get butts in the seats. We were just taking resumes and just trying to hire people because you're opening a business. Like we have leads coming in and we can't service them because we didn't have the people. And so we've kind of defined our process a little bit better, since we started.
Man, there's so many different things I want to dig into here, Wes. This is ridiculous. Like, I don't know where to go, but I make a quick statement. So I think the cardinal sin of entrepreneur and founder and future CEO is if you want it done, do it yourself. That's what Steve alluded to. That really is in some ways could be true, but that's what cages you. That's what limits you. That's where you'll never ever scale the business and go just create yourself a job and get paid okay, I guess, if you set it up right. But you'll never scale the business and have the satisfaction of running a large, growing, successful business. So we got to get off of that mindset. But I want to talk about hiring process. I don't know, Stevie, if you have specific questions. I'm really this is, as operators of services business here in this group and probably a lot of listeners, it's our biggest expense. That's our biggest value. That's our biggest competitive advantage, right? Our people. Yeah. Wes, can you walk us through, maybe not in complete detail, but in sort of in a hiring process? Like how do you identify you need to hire, right? How do you when do you decide we're going to hire a person? And then from there, how do you go about actually filling the position?
So we're based off how we hire is based off how many leads or referrals we're getting in, right? So in the property management field, I base mine off the number of doors that we have. So we just brought on a company that had 15,000 doors. And so I know that, my threshold is another 5,000 doors, and then I need to hire another person. So it's right around that 20,000 door mark. And so when we're close to the threshold before even, because it's a month to train somebody here to get them up to speed, then, we start putting our applications out on Indeed and Facebook and with questionnaires, and, they have to fill out a disc profile before we'll even, respond back to them, to see if they're what we're looking for.
Like what? What's the example of the questionnaire you'd send out or you'd publish?
So my business partner handles that, and I'll try to paraphrase, the best that I can. But it's just basically sales questions, asking them, what their biggest success is on selling. If they've been told no before, how do they overact, or, how do they act to that? How does it affect them mentally? Because some people that are being told no, like it does suck, and it puts a dent in your, your ego and whatever. And it's hard to push on from that. But if you just let it roll off and you're like on to the next one, because there's always another customer out there that you can get, then that's what we're looking for. But I guess the biggest thing is we look through is the disc profiling. Go ahead,
Wes?
Yes, sir.
When you do your questions on the interview process, do you gear them towards the type of disc profile you want to hire? Because you can actually gear your questions. Like, for example, if you're hiring someone who's in sales or on the phone, right? Let's say it's a salesperson. You want to ask them, do you want to make as much money as humanly possible? Do you want to make $300,000 and not have a direct schedule? So if you are talking to someone who's an I in the disc profile, that's going to attract them. If you're talking to someone who's a C, who's an accountant, they're going to go, that's not a job. An accountant would be, do you like working with spreadsheets? Do you like data? Do you like information? Do you like processes? Do you like procedures? If you did that in a sales interview, a salesperson is going to say, I don't like those things. But someone that's an accountant would go, that's exactly what I want. So I don't know if you're doing this, but you may want to actually set your interview questions geared towards the type of disc that you're looking for, because that's what will pop out to them. Now, my question that I had for you is, you've gotten over the hump of having the bad employees, the wrong employees with disc, right? Mm-hmm. And one thing someone told me a long time ago, and it made a lot of sense. He said, good employees are not hired, they're made and bred. Meaning you have to cultivate them. So that's it. So if you have a bad employee, sometimes you have a bad leader. And we all know that when we start off in this industry, sometimes we're bad leaders. Sometimes people continue to be bad leaders and then they go out of business. So how did you have to change? Because you guys obviously had to change from frantic reactionary mode to saying, okay, let's calm down. Let's settle in a little bit. Let's think about who we're hiring. Let's train them, because you got to give them the tools. How did you guys go through that? Because it was you and Will. You guys had to kind of walk through. How did you guys have those conversations and walk through that process of slowing yourself down to do that?
Man, it's taking a big, deep breath, right? And I think, daily communication between Will and I want to just say this first and foremost: having a business partner is either the best thing in the world or it's the worst thing, right? You have to be in constant communication. And I think Will and I are two different personalities. He runs the operation. He has the CEO title because I did not want it. I'm like, Steve, I want to be amongst the people, the PR guy. And we both mesh very well. So Will had to dial in, as Steve knows, because we have numerous conversations, because I consider Steve one of my great mentors, is we didn't have a training process in place until we made a video library, right? Finally, so that, these new employees, so it quit taking all of Will's time to train these people, and then they could just go through the video library to start their training process for the first week. Something else, and I think that was the biggest thing, that was the time suck that was taking a lot of our time in the beginning, up until, earlier this year, to where we really hit our spurt in growth, was the training.
Yeah. And so you think that was the key? Now, do you have some kind of recurrent training for them, or is it just kind of set it and forget it and hope they remember it? Or have you gotten that far in the process?
No, it's always, Will's here daily, and it's a learning curve every day. I mean, anything that's reiterated us. I mean, we're getting emails constantly from providers, with things changing. We're having to read different disclosures, whatever the case may be. And, luckily we're up here, Will's in their face every day, and we just have to have those mini meetings with people, because what's hard in our business is it's really hard to pull everybody off the phone to get them to even sit down for 5 or 15 minutes, because our phone's blowing up constantly. You just can't do that. So
who's calling you, Wes?
Our customers that are needing their utilities set up. So we don't always reach out to them. Our phone has started ringing on the other end. We may try to reach out to somebody, and, their life or work schedule permits them from answering the phone, a text, or an email. And so they might call back at a later time. And it just here lately, I can hear the phone right now. It's just ringing off the wall. So,
hey, Wes, have you thought of maybe having a company newsletter that maybe, or a video from the CEO where he actually talks about the changes for the week, and then he sends it out in a video to everybody, and he just wants them to maybe respond that they got it and they watched it? Just an idea where you have an update that way.
Well, we would, but they just happen daily, man. We're a different business other than like like a property management company or whatever. It's like we've got to be constantly every day training, retraining, getting the communication out to these agents, just to make sure. It's just a different animal.
All your agents. I just want one quick question, Steve. Are all your agents in-house in the call center, or do you have people outside?
They're all in-house. The people that actually take care of the client. We do have three VAs now, and one person, my VP of sales, who lives in Austin.
So, Wes, let me ask you this, and something you may want to do is you may want to have a daily huddle where every day before work starts, it's kind of like doctors have them before surgery, flight crews have them before they fly, and they have a daily huddle where it's a 5-minute huddle where you actually just go over any changes, and that can even be where you discuss KPIs.
We'd have to have 4 different huddles.
Well,
before different schedules.
You may. But so let me ask you this: what kind of KPIs do you guys run off of in your company?
That's a good question. So on the internal side, and like I said, me and Will are completely opposite. I don't piss in his pond; he doesn't pee in mine. So, but his thing is he tracks daily activities, how many leads people are taking. Are they missing their callbacks? Are they calling these people on time? He measures probably about 15 different things a day. And if people aren't hitting like an average of $8 commission per hour, they have to fill out these KPIs by the end of the day to let us know. And it helps Will identify what happened that day. So he can go back in there and look and say, man, you had 4 activities for the day, which means text, phone call, or email. Everybody else in the office had 30. What the hell were you doing all day? You know what I mean?
Right.
It's a definite measure, direct measure, an instant measure of what they did that day.
What CRM are you using?
What's that?
What CRM are you using?
QuickBase. Well, we use QuickBase, and I use SharpSpring. QuickBase runs our day-to-day where all our order entry and everything's in, and then SharpSpring is my basically Salesforce, if you would, CRM, kind of like HubSpot.
Do you like SharpSpring?
I do. It was a cheaper alternative for any entrepreneur listening out here. I did a lot of research on HubSpot, and I did a lot of research on SharpSpring, and not to get off topic, but I would highly recommend, if HubSpot is not in your budget now, which it is a very expensive program, I would strongly recommend that you try SharpSpring. It's a definitely good alternative to start with.
So I have one question before we move on.
Yes.
Do you and Will have KPIs that you have to turn into each other?
That's a great question. No, we don't.
Right. A lot of people don't. And because we're all bosses and CEOs, we kind of bypass that, right? And I've always heard the fish stinks from the head down. You lead by example. But when it comes to accountability, all of a sudden, a lot of times we're going, well, I'm the boss. But it's like, the question is who holds you accountable? Who fires you if you're not doing your job? If you're saying, hey, I'm Wes and I'm going out there, I'm doing this, but it's like, okay, well, what do you do? Like, how are you really helping the company, or are you hurting the company? Is Will the right person? A lot of people think that just because you're the owner that you should have that role. But the reality is you may be bad in a role and not know it, right? You and Will obviously are very good, but for the people listening, I would say that, you know, you have to ask yourself, who do you answer to? Who are you accountable to? And if their answer is no one, you're probably not operating at your optimum speed, because it's just human nature, right? And Alex, I don't know, do you guys do KPIs where you actually have to turn them in? Because you're kind of the top of the pile there, but do you turn them into anyone or do anything?
We do, but I actually wanted to this is exactly what I want to do to you. I was going to ask you, if you don't mind, maybe may I ask you this first. You and Pete is obviously your co-founder. What KPIs do you actually report to each other?
That's a good question. So now I'm on the spot, huh? That's what I get for bringing it up.
There you go.
Well, so Pete and I, you know, we're very specific in our roles, and just like Will and Wes, you know, we don't cross each other's paths. And so what Pete has me doing as visionary of the company is I'm the one who's making, you know, we're making Empire Academy. So we're making videos, knowledge-based videos, very extensive amount of videos for that. So for example, I'm responsible to do 25 educational videos a week. Then I'm responsible to do 10 video blogs a week. So these are things that I'm accountable for. Then we're looking at a licensing model and other things. So I'm responsible to have some deliverables to learn how to best do the licensing franchise model. And I'm supposed to be setting up meetings. So I have meetings. So these are the things that I'm accountable for specific to my role. But all of these things that I am accountable for are based on the quarterly goal, which is based on the company's yearly goal. So, you know, we operate off of, there was a great book called Traction. I don't know if you ever read it by Gino Wickman.
Very, very big fan, yeah.
And so we run our company basically on that model, on the meeting level. So we have our rocks, which are, you know, we have our yearly goal. We do a 2-day offsite meeting where we created a leadership team, the leaders in the company. We meet offsite for 2 days, and we go over the yearly goals, the 3-year goal, the 5-year goal, 10-year goal, you know, the master of the world goal type thing. Then we say, okay, we take those goals and we try to break them down into quarters. And everyone in the leadership team gets a certain amount of, they get gold. They get things that they have to accomplish. Now, it could be them. It could be their team. We don't really care, but they are accountable to those goals. So then what we do is we establish what the quarterly goals are. We do that basically in this meeting, and we follow the book basically as to how they say to run the 2-day meeting, the offsite. We don't, you know, we do it at a hotel. We don't do it anywhere nearby. And then what we do is once we have those quarterly goals, we break those down into strategies of when those deliverables are going to happen and KPIs related to those strategies based on the goal. So my answer, the long way around is we have a lot of different KPIs based on what the goals are. And so those KPIs change for the quarterly basis of what we're doing. And so, you know, every Tuesday at 7 a.m., the whole leadership team is in the office, and we do a 1.5-hour meeting to go over our weekly progress of the goals. And we have a company scorecard where we go over the health check of the company, vital numbers, which are color-coded as KPIs, and we want to see red or green. And if it's red 2 weeks in a row, it goes on our issues list. And the issues list is something that we need to investigate further. Why we red 2 weeks in a row? Did we put a wrong goal, or is there a bigger problem that we don't know about? And so that's how we start. What we realized with those KPIs, and I don't know if you do anything like this, but what it realized is it made us stop being reactionary and stop going off on tangents in meetings where you start a meeting and next thing you know, you're going down this rabbit hole of operators talking about things that really is not relevant towards the goal, but it's relevant because it's an emotional thing right there. And so that's why that has stopped us. So the KPIs change all the time based on what the quarterly goal is, based on what the yearly goal is.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds, I mean, I've known that, right? I've known that. I try to listen it again because you and I talk about this in detail and we break these pieces down, and I've listened to your other shows and podcasts, but like as a sort of, if I come to it with a fresh mindset and listen to everything you just said, it sounds immensely complicated. Now, Steve, somebody's listening out there thinking, okay, Steve is a freaking master. You know, all these guys are running businesses. They have time to work on the business, not in the business, but I'm still in the trenches right now. I'm still in the trenches. What would you recommend people start, Steve? reading that traction book is a good way to.
I think reading the traction book, but I think more importantly, and I don't know if Wes, if you do this, but you gotta start by putting things on paper. You gotta create an organization chart, an accountability chart, and you gotta lay out the pieces of the chess puzzle as to how this thing is going to be played out, how it looks now, and then how does the org chart look in 10 years from now when your goal is accomplished, whenever that goal is. And you're going to have a lot of roles that are going to have your name attached to it, and that's fine. But what you're going to do is you're going to start realizing that if, let's say you have your organization chart and you sit there and say, okay, you know what? The next person I'm going to need is a salesperson when I get to door number 15,000, like Wes said, right? Because you got to forecast that out. So now you know you're doing things systematically based on the org chart and based on the plan, not based on reaction. And I think entrepreneurs, and I think we all fall victim to this, is after a while, we start doing things reactionary because it's a problem in our face today. This is a problem. I need to fix it right now. And then, we're very heavily coached by a business coach. And when we bring this to our coach, he'll say, is that part of your plan? I know it's a problem, but is it part of your plan? If it's not part of your plan, you either don't do it or you make it part of your plan, but you have to stick to the plan. Don't just change things because you've got a rock in your foot right now. You have a plan that you're doing. You got to stick to the plan. And, like Pete says, when I start going off on these, just like Will would do, we go off on these tangents of great ideas. And Pete's like, hey, if you're 1 degree off course, we're not going to make our destination. So we have a destination. One thing that I do that takes my focus from being 100% on this to being 98% and 2%, all of a sudden I'm drifting. And I think that's the problem as entrepreneurs. We all drift a little bit because that's why we got into this, because we're all entrepreneurs, right? We thought that we could build a better mousetrap than someone else. The problem is we need the Wills and the Petes of the world to keep us in line, to keep us driving down on KPIs and things, because we're out there trying to think of all these things, and KPIs are not my strong point. But if I'm told to do them, I will do them, and I think that's the problem a lot of us have as entrepreneurs. We want to do it better than people, but we don't really know how to do it consistently day after day, week after week. And the non-emotional, non-reactionary planning it out is the key. And look, Alex, you probably didn't know you were going to make the top list that you just made. You probably didn't start off your company saying, I'm going to start this and I'm going to be on this list, but you probably changed course specifically to get there when you did. I mean, you do these great events. You're all over the place. You guys go to Australia. You do all these things, and you didn't probably start off planning that, but you probably ended up doing that because you looked at it and you changed your plan, I'm guessing, at some point, just like, Will did. He changed his plan. And I don't think there's anything wrong with changing their plan. I think it's when they don't have a plan and they're bouncing. And I think that's what a lot of young entrepreneurs do. Just like Wes said, when they started out, they were bouncing. And I think we all do that. But at some point, you got to set your feet and you got to stop bouncing.
So let me just summarize what you said. Start with a plan.
Start with a plan.
Right. That's it. Right. That's the core. I think that's right. I think about a year into the business. In fact, I was a Radio Shack store manager for 5.5 years. That's how I started my career. I fell in love with entrepreneurship while being a Radio Shack store manager. We've done well. The district management, the regional management left us alone. Like, we did not hear from them at all. They were coaching all the bad stores in bringing them up, which is, by the way, is a bad strategy. You want to coach your top dogs as much as you want to coach, your shitty, not well performing stores. But anyway, I've learned that forecasting and planning, and so from year one we've been forecasting and putting your plan together. But you're absolutely right, Steve. Having your plan is difficult because you know why people don't do it? It's because you got to stick to it. Otherwise, it's not a plan.
True.
Right? Otherwise, it's and people are afraid to put things down on paper without all of the information available to them to make that plan.
Can I add something to that too?
Please,
Wes. With your plan, you also need a process to get.
You got to have a process.
To absolutely accomplish your plan before the plan's even in place, you got to have a process for that plan. So
expand on that a little bit, Wes. What do you? How do you tie those two together?
So I'll just use an example for me because this is pretty. I don't know. This is where my tipping point was earlier this year. So I happened to do where my turning point was for our businesses. So I'm real big into NARPM and the property management community, and I'm very thankful to be here. And I started doing some podcasts, and not knowing, these podcasts had national, presence or whatever. And so did a couple of these podcasts, and all of a sudden my phone, website, email, everything was just blowing up. Right.
Careful what you ask for.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, oh, this is freaking awesome. My phone's ringing. I'm setting like 5-6 appointments a day. So anyway, I'll skip ahead. So within a 3-month span, I signed up 94 companies. Okay. 94 property management companies. It sounds great, right? Awesome. Signed up 94 companies. So during this whole process, I'm the only one selling. And so I'm just signing up people. I'm taking appointments. I'm on the phone, closing out, doing my pitch. Everybody's excited about it. We're signing them up. And, 3 months go by, and I'm like, where the hell are the leads? Right? Like, where are they going? And so what I identified real quick is, and so you have implementers out there, and then you don't. And I'm not saying that property managers are all bad at implementing, but, we all get busy. They're getting ramped up for busy season. And so I had no follow-up behind my sales. And so I ended up, and because of that, I probably didn't lose traction, but just nobody was being reminded to implement our service. Right. So I ended up putting an onboarding specialist in place. So now moving forward, she got to go back and call all those 94 people and get them on basically a track to implement. And so now, she calls them, verifies their information. I'm not going to go through the whole process, but anyway, it's actually reminding them, capturing everything we need. And she's engaged with them to make sure that they're, onboarded the first month, to make sure that we get them sending. And so I guess the moral of the story was, like, if you don't have a process in place to even handle what your sales are coming in, then you're going to fail. And like, I had no idea. I'm a new business owner, right? Like, it's trial by fire. So if I would have known that, I would have had that in place, but there's no way of knowing. So all I can say is, if you think for a second that you're going to get busy or whatever, you need to have a process in place beforehand. And so it's just making me think through a lot more things now before we dive into things. I want to make sure that we're prepared for what we're about to get ourselves into.
So let me ask you this, Wes.
Yeah.
You learned your lesson, right? Processes, procedures, all that.
Mm-hmm.
If you got hit by a bus tomorrow, would your business keep growing?
Sure would. Absolutely.
That's great. That's huge, because so many people, it is dependent upon them. And that is one of the biggest mistakes. And I'm curious what you think your biggest mistake to date is. And I want to know what that is. But I think that's the biggest problem people have, is I ask them, if you didn't exist tomorrow, could your business keep growing? Because the definition of a business is a commercial, profitable enterprise that runs without you. Because if not, it's a job. It's not a business.
Right.
And so many people, as you and I know, and especially, unfortunately in this property management industry, is they identify themselves as property managers, not as business owners. When really that's what they are, as business owners, but they don't even identify themselves as one. So it's no wonder they don't have a business, because they don't think of it as a business. They think of themselves as operators and property managers. And I think that, I'm sure you hanging out with Pete and I and all the stuff that we've talked about has helped you do that. And, Alex, what are your thoughts on that? Do you get a lot of people that kind of are operators and not business owners?
That's a good question. It has been the industry is going through fairly massive rebirth, I should say. Yeah. And I think as that sort of process, as it continues, we're going to see more and more investors begin to trust property managers with their properties, and we'll see a lot more growth in the industry. But that sort of rebirth, that revamp needs to happen, because you have a lot of operators in this industry who did not really grasp the business side of it. But it sounded like, you can manage 80 properties, 100 properties and make some decent money. So you do it yourself, then you hire a helper, then you bring another 20, 30 properties. There's really no process. There was nothing. Like, I don't know, 5-7 years ago, most people were like that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying anything wrong with that. It's just not a business. It's a job, as you say. You create yourself a job. So I see this tremendous push towards entrepreneurship, and you see the PM Grow Summit is popular and successful for that reason. Who would know that if you start a conference, all of a sudden you sell out the first year? Well, it doesn't work that way. The only reason it works is because topically it hits the industry just right. It's gathering property management entrepreneurs, not property managers, around the table to discuss issues. So I think this industry is definitely attracting some interesting talent, and you see a lot of private money going in here, VC money going in here. That's got to tell you something.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of steady revenue in this business, and people are looking at that and they're putting eyes on it, and they're saying, sales may make more per year in percentages, but it's not as steady as the property management. And I think that's what they're seeing, and that's we see it. Even in Australia, you and I both have been out there speaking and doing stuff, and it's very prevalent there. I mean, it's almost recession proof, right? In good times, investors are buying. In bad times, people can't sell their houses. Yeah. So in good times and bad times, there are rentals, and everyone needs a roof over their head, and everyone rents, and so that's the key to this whole thing, is that, it is a consistent source of revenue and money. And if you know how to put the right system around what you're doing, just like what Wes is doing. And, we help Wes and work with him and chat and stuff and have conversations, and, you put the right system around it, and it'll explode. And I think that's what like you said, like the success of your convention that you guys do, I think that's the reason is people want to see it from an entrepreneur's perspective. They don't necessarily want to learn the educational nuts and bolts. While they're still important,
it's important.
And they're necessary.
But NARPM provides that education, right? NARPM is exceptional for that sort of level of education.
Exactly.
Right. And they started on the entrepreneurship level, and they're sort of bringing up their education towards that level. But they provide a significantly well put together base as well as advanced property management education. Just entrepreneurship is a little bit different.
Exactly. And I don't think it's an or, I think it's an and. I think you have to have the Pete's in the world, Pete's an RVP in NARPM, and he's involved in it, and I think you have to have that. But there's no value in me going into NARPM as much as a value of me of going out there and finding funds and growing the company, just like Wes, right? We have our strengths, right? And I think it's what you do is you with 4.5 and with PM Grow, you guys are playing to the strengths of different roles and different models, because you got to have both of them, right? You got to have NARPM, but you have to have a PM Grow out there also, because there are people out there doing these things. There's people figuring this out, and they're figuring it out without the PM Grow before PM Grow came around. Now that you guys are around, now it's all of a sudden it's like, okay, now things are starting to change. Other people are putting eyes on this, just like Wes's industry. No one even knew Wes's industry was an industry, right? You didn't even know it existed, or what, I still don't even know what he does. I'm not even sure what he does still, but but he does send me a lot of referral checks of clients that go to him, so it works. But again, it's one of those things, you just don't realize that these things exist and they're necessary until you start realizing that, man, there's so many different facets to business. But the problem is it's a double-edged sword, right? I think that we all want to get in business because we want to be independent. We don't want to be told, and we want this and we want that. But there's a other side of the sword to that, right? There's a downside to that, right? There's when you mess up, it's for real. You can't just get in trouble by your owner, by your supervisor, right? There is no supervisor. Your supervisor is your bank, and they're the ones that are calling the shots, and it's a different level, right, Alex? I mean, you and I have had the discussion that we last, right? We let our employees, they eat first, right? They all get paid first. We make sure we do. You and I have talked about this, and that's what leaders do. Leaders make sure that the people are taken care of that are going to take care of you. And that's something that I think I don't think it's missing in this, in the entrepreneurship, but I don't think it's as relevant as it should be.
I agree.
I was just going to say something, guys, if you don't mind. So as a young entrepreneur, right, like you guys have been in business for a very long time. I've only owned my own company for a few years now, okay, and I'm still learning. And a lot of people starting out, I mean, once you start out as an entrepreneur, I mean, there's so many things coming at you and so many people telling you what you should do. Read this book, follow this podcast, all this BS, okay? So I'm different than most people out there. I hate reading. I like listening to podcasts, but you tell me to read a book, it's probably not going to happen. I like spending time with my family. I spend enough time at work. And, I have adapted some of Steve's mentality. If you're at the gym, replace your podcast with the music. But, another dude speaking in my ear sometimes just doesn't work. That was supposed to be funny. So if I had any advice just to give, young entrepreneurs just to not make the same mistakes that, maybe I made in the past is, get your plan, get your process, and then hire the right people. And, find some people that you can confide in, like I did with Steve and Pete, who has helped me tremendously. But don't get caught up in what everybody says you have to be for an entrepreneur. Focus on what's right in front of you and just to start.
Right. You're going to fail. Failure is part of it, right? You're going to have to stumble and hit your head a few times. And if you're not up for that, then this is not for you. But one of the things is why we're doing this podcast, it is lonely at the top. You alluded to this, Wes. It's very hard to find. You don't complain down, right? You can't I can't come out and say, hey, we have 3 months worth of expenses and then we screwed after that, right? I can't really be complaining about that, but I need somebody that I can talk to. And so this podcast is an outlet. But before we go, we're running out of time, but I want to actually have some kind of maybe a little bit of a tradition or process to keep our entrepreneur guests sort of committed and connected to their purpose and goal. So I wanted to see if I can get you, Wes, to give us, if you come on this podcast in 6 months, what are the 2 or 3 key numbers you are looking, or key outcomes you're looking to have to call this a successful 6 months? And then we'll come have you in 6 months and check on you.
Oh, I like that a lot. Can it be revenue or whatever the case may be? I mean, that's what we base our company off of. So I would like to be at $300,000 a month in revenue.
So 300K in MRR.
Right. And like right now I'm at around 180.
Wow. So that's a big
in
jump,
6 months.
Man.
Hey man, I got some big things coming down the pipe, man. I know you do. So with all these new hires we have going and the new process we have in place. So that's a basic goal for us. And what's another one?
I like that. Revenue solves, growth solves all problems. Even though you go to all these profit guys and profit coaches, and Jordan and I have Jordan Muella, Wes?
I do not.
All right, so a quick pre-story for the audience here. He's the CEO of founder of Profit Coach, and he's all about profit and all that. And him and I always have these healthy, and Steve and I are gonna beat him down next week. You guys better show up next Monday. We're gonna do a beat down on Jordan. But he's all about profit, and my thing is always like, hey, first thing, revenue solves a lot of problems, right? Yeah. There's opportunity for employees. There's more earning potential for the company. There's just so many other things open up if your revenue grows. And so, Wes, I like your goal. The first thing is let's hit the nail it. Let's hit the most important thing first. I want to double my revenue in 6 months. Hell yeah, love it, man.
Yeah.
What's another one?
That's pretty much all I'm worried about.
That's all good.
Honestly, because listen, things arise. Like we have, I think 12 people in here right now. So as we're learning, when 12 people get together, new personalities are conflicting, things we haven't ever dealt with before, people bitching about other, it's the small stuff, right? But it's just never happened before. We're learning how to deal with people now. And so I don't know. I think I'm more worried about the revenue. Will's got to handle this on the inside, but that's my goal, is to have us to there.
That's good. And you're right. You're so right, Alex. Sales cures a lot of problems. And I don't care what anybody says. You start selling, people don't have an expense problem. They have an income problem. That's the thing. They're looking at it from the wrong side of the barrel, basically, in my opinion. When people say we're not, our expenses are too high. Well, your expenses are too high, but your sales probably suck. How much do you focus on sales? How much do you train your salespeople? You don't grow by shrinking. You grow by growing, and you grow by increasing your monthly revenue, and you double down and triple down, and you kind of go, okay, how do we do this? And just like Wes said, I think it's great. you got to shoot for it, right? You got to swing for the fences, and the only way you do that is you got to aim big, and having that revenue. So 6 months is the plan. Is that right?
Yeah, 200 more property management companies signed up.
200 more. Okay, so we'll keep you on the books for these KPIs, these targets. Wes, it was an absolute pleasure having you on. I'm really glad to have met you. You should think about PM Grow and actually presenting your company at PM Grow. If you're interested, I'll send you.
I would love to.
The conference is we're almost ready to announce the dates. It's not quite there yet, but I'll send you the sponsorship prospectus. It might actually work really well for you. I don't know, Steve, if you recommend Wes or not, but where he's at, based on where he's at. I don't know where he's at.
Yeah, I would.
Like it's perfect for him, but
yeah, Wes is it's all up here, right? It's that's what creates the leader, right? And Pete and I have had a lot of conversations, a lot of alcohol nights with him, but a lot of deep conversations about growing, and you can tell the people that really want to grow and that really want to succeed and the ones that don't. And there's no doubt. I mean, he's a student of learning, and I'm so proud of how well he's done. And he picks my brain, he picks Pete's brain. We talk, we have conversations, and we created that Facebook group, the Sphere of Influence, and that's where a lot of these leaders go to talk about their challenges and their problems, because there's not many places, I think, at least in Facebook land, that people can go and without promoting their service. And I don't want that. I want people to talk about their problems and have solutions to employee issues and those other things. So if anybody does want to come on the Sphere of Influence and see it on Facebook, it's a great group because it's all about how we function as owners of companies and how we deal with everyday challenges that you don't normally get to answer. So like Alex said, there's no one to complain or vent to, but there you kind of can. And that's what's nice about it.
I want to have before we go, one last thing. I want to have a vote, actually. So you wanted to call this podcast Lion's Den, right?
Lion's Den of Leadership.
Lion's Den of Leadership. Okay, so that's Steve's very eloquent naming of this particular leadership podcast. I want to call it Founders in the Trenches. I mean, something like that, or along the lines of founder. I maybe have a better idea next time, but Founders in the Trenches to me is kind of who we are and where we are. We're not just hypothetically talking about possibilities of running a business and academically breaking things down. We're cooking in this thing. We're in the trenches. It's very.
How about calling it the heat of battle?
Heat of battle. All right. Anywho, all right, guys. It was an absolute pleasure. Let's call this a day, and we'll have you, Mr. Wes, here next time. Answer to your own targets and objectives.
So you do have a KPI, Wes.
I know, a silent one, right?
That's right.
Alex, I just want to thank you for having me on. Steve, always a pleasure doing these shows with you. And thank you for all your help and inspiration over these past couple of years. I really appreciate all your help, man.
No problem. You're a winner, bud. Keep it up.
Thanks, guys.
All right, guys.
Thank you.
See ya. Bye-bye.